Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're doing a B.E.S deck profile. So I'm really excited this was actually suggested by one of my patrons, Sienna. And this deck is a really awesome deck that actually plays all the boss monsters from Gradius, which is an old school game that Konami actually made, which is really cool that they made cards out of the game. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can come part notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below, just like Sienna did, for all those awesome rewards like getting your name in the description of every single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron along with test hands. And definitely give Sienna some love down in the comments down below. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of B.E.S Blaster Cannon Core, which is a really good card for this deck, and it's a really good boss monster as well. That if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon this card from your hand. And you can only special summon this card this way once per turn. If this card is normal or special summon, you get to place 3 counters on this card. And it cannot be destroyed by battle as well. And at the end of the damage step, if this card battled, you have to remove a counter from it. But if you can't remove a counter from it, it destroys itself, which is okay because you have other cards in the deck that help you recover other cards to your side of the field when they destroy themselves. We then play 3 copies of B.E.S Mark III. Now this card is a really good card for the deck. I love seeing this card in my opening hand. That if your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position. And if this card is normal or special summon, you get to place 3 counters on this card, and it cannot be destroyed by battle. At the end of the damage step, if this card battles a monster, you have to remove a counter from this card. And if you can't, you have to destroy the card. This card also has a really unique effect when it's in the graveyard, that you can banish it from your graveyard to shuffle all B.E.S monsters from your graveyard back into the deck, which helps out a lot to be able to shuffle all of your monsters back because you're going to be going through a lot of your B.E.S monsters pretty quickly. We then play 3 copies of B.E.S Mark II. Mark II is really good as well, but this one is a little bit unique because it has the ability, if you control no monsters, you can normal summon this card without tributing. And then when this card is special summoned, place 3 counters on it. And you cannot, this card cannot be destroyed by battle, and if this card attacks or is attacked, you remove a counter from this card, and if you can't remove the counter, it instantly destroys itself. It's a pretty good card in this deck, but it does have to be special summoned off of a card effect to get its 3 counters, which is not the greatest in the world, but it's still a really good card to actually special summon off of some of the cards in the deck. We then play 3 copies of B.E.S Tetran. Tetran is also very good in the deck. It's also like a walking MST because you put 3 counters on this card when it's normal summon, and it also has the ability this card cannot be destroyed by battle, and if this card battles a monster, you remove a counter from this card at the end of the damage step, and if you can't, you have to destroy this card. And it also has the ability by removing a counter, you can destroy a spell or trap on the field, which helps out the deck a lot to give you a little bit of spell and trap removal as well. For the other cards we're playing in the deck that are monsters, we're playing 3 copies of Planet Pathfinder. Planet Pathfinder is very important for this deck because you're going to be using Planet Pathfinder a lot to be able to just normal summon this card out to your side of the field and get to your field spell, because the field spell is single-handedly the most important card in the entire deck to get to. We then play double Gamma Seal because Gamma Seal is really good in the deck too to out really problematic monsters that your B.E.S monsters usually couldn't handle. The Gamma Seal basically just handles that for you. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is a really good card because you can just discard this card from your hand and stop your opponent from touching the deck. We play 3 copies of Psyframe Gear Gamma. Gamma is really good in this deck as well because the Gamma has the ability that it's going to stop your hand traps, because whenever your opponent activates a monster effect, you can special summon this card to your side of the field as long as you don't control a monster, negate that monster effect, and then special summon a Psyframe Gear Driver from your hand, deck, graveyard, or banish zone, which is really cool to be able to just special summon this card to your side of the field and get you basically an instant level 8 synchro monster. So this deck is a really interesting deck to say the least. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Harpy's Feather Duster. Harpy's Feather Duster is a really good card because this card just basically deals with back row. Tetran is going to help you out with that a lot, but the Harpy's Feather Duster helps you clean up where that card can't. We play a single copy of Call by the Grave because you really don't want to get hand trapped, as you guys can probably tell by the copies of the Gamma. You really do need to get to the field spell as quickly as possible. 1 copy of Terraforming, speaking of getting to the field spell really quickly. We then play 3 copies of B.E.F, the Zealous. B.E.F Zealous is really good in this deck because this card helps out the deck a lot, that when it's activated, you can add a boss rush from your deck to your hand. Then all B.E.S monsters you control gain additional 500 attack and defense. And your opponent cannot target them with card effects, and they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects either. And then once per turn, you can special summon a B.E.S monster from your hand. And if a BES monsters is normal or special summon, you get to place a counter on it. Giving them an extra counter on this card is just really, really helpful. We then play 3 copies of Boss Rush. Boss Rush is an old school card, really old school. This card actually came out a long time ago in Elemental Energy, which is an old school GX pack. And has the ability that the controller of this card cannot normal summon or set. During the end phase of the turn that a monster on your side of the field that included B.E.S in its name or named Big Core is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon from your deck 1 monster that includes B.E.S in its name, or a Big Core in its name, which is a really good effect to be able to just instantly special summon out one of those monsters from the deck, which is why Mark II is such a good card with Boss Rush, is because it's going to get its 3 counters plus its 1 off of the copy of Zealous, and then you're going to get out the copy of Boss Rush to be able to special summon that card off of your other cards getting destroyed. We then play 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Pot of Extravagance helps out the deck a lot because you don't super need the extra deck at all in this deck. So the Pot of Extravagance is just going to help you dig in the deck to draw out the copy of the field spell. We then play 3 copies of Limiter Removal. The Limiter Removals are absolutely insane in this deck because you can OTK your opponent off of 1 or 2 of these activated simultaneously. And it's really awesome because you can special summon out multiple BES monsters to your side of the field with the copies of the Mark III and the copy of the Cannon Core Blaster, which is really, really cool to be able to special summon out your Cannon Core to your side of the field basically for free, and being able to use limiter removal with it is just going to make it really, really big. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the single trap that we're playing in the deck. So for the only trap we're playing a single copy of Skill Drain. Skill Drain is very important for this deck because this card helps out the deck a lot to be able to just turn off monster effects, and it helps you out because it basically ignores the counters, which is kind of cool, and it hurts the opponent a lot more than it hurts us because it's going to turn off their monster effects while we still have really big ships on our side of the field to be able to attack them with. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Pentastag. Pentastag is really important for this deck because it's going to let your monsters do piercing damage. This card comboed with your copies of the limiter removal is just really good because it makes your BES monsters essentially turn into piercing monsters that this card points to, which is very, very helpful for this deck. We play 2 copies of IP Masquerade. This card is also very helpful because it can help you link summon during your opponent's turn, just in case you need to go into some monsters. This card is very, very helpful for the deck. 1 copy of Nightmare Cerberus. I only play 1 Cerberus because Cerberus is a good card, but I don't summon it all that often because basically what it does is it pops monsters, so it's an okay card for this deck. We play 2 copies of Nightmare Phoenix. This card pops spells and traps, which is a very good effect for this deck. And as you guys have noticed as you've been looking at this deck doesn't have, outside of the Tetran and the copy of the Harpy's Feather Duster, you do want to play the copies of Phoenix because this card deck really does lose to spell and traps. So this card is very important for the deck to handle back row. We play 2 copies of Nightmare Unicorn. Nightmare Unicorn is basically here to spin cards that the BES monsters can't handle. So this card is very helpful just to discard a card, to spin a card back into your opponent's deck. So I really like playing the 2 copies of the Nightmare Unicorn. But all these cards, as you guys are probably noticing, are suggestion cards and basically turning your extra deck into toolbox, which is pretty cool. 1 copy of Borreload. Borreload is a really good card in the deck as well. You will summon this card every so often as you link climb, but this card can be literally anything. It can be a copy of Boral Sword, it can be a copy of Appaloosa, it can be a copy of Access Code, it can be Underworld Goddess. It's totally up to you what this particular card is. We then play a single copy of Boral Sword. That's why I played the 2 different ones, is because just to show you guys, this could be any 2 link 4s that you want it to be. It can be another copy of Nightmare Phoenix, it can be another copy of Unicorn, it can be another Pentastag. It's kind of up to you what you feel like you want to play in these 2 slots. You won't summon out the copy of Boral Sword all that often. The Boral Load is really good because it helps you take your opponent's monsters, and it's a pretty good out to Dragoons, but this card helps out a lot in the deck. We then play a single copy of Cyframe Lord Omega. Omega helps out a lot because you're using the copies of your Gamma. So this card helps you rip a card out of your opponent's hand and get it off the field, which is a really good effect, just to be able to rip a card out of your opponent's hand and give you a 2800 beat stick on your side of the field. We then play a single copy of Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend. Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend is a card that I play in here because you can use it, the copy of the Gamma and the Driver, to actually synchro summon into this card. So it helps out a lot to summon this card to your side of the field and just board wipe the field to be able to get your ships in in for OTKs. We then play 2 copies of Draco Berserker of the Tenyi. This card is a really good card because it basically banishes the card because it has the ability that when an opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can banish it, and if the attacking monster, if this card attacks a effect monster by battle, you can send it to the graveyard. This card gains attack equal to that monster's original attack permanently and also can make a second attack during the battle phase. But whenever your opponent activates a monster effect, you can quick effect banish it, which is a really good effect just to be able to handle problematic monster effects that it doesn't quite negate, but it does get rid of a card, so it does help a lot. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really awesome deck to be able to play around with, and it's very budget as well because, like I said, you don't super need the extra deck. These are all suggestions. Basically play a couple of rank 8 or level 8 synchro monsters to use with your Gamma, and then definitely play the Nightmare package because the Nightmare package helps out a lot in this deck to be able to do some really cool stuff to handle cards like spells and traps and monsters. It helps out a lot, but definitely play the Pentastags because they help you do piercing damage with your B.E.S monsters, because usually you're going to end up with like 2 or 3 of your B.E.S monsters on your side of the field, but I don't usually find myself wanting to give them up for link summons, which is why you play the Extravagance build. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, definitely hit the bell to become part of the notification squad, and definitely give Sienna some love down in the comments down below, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.